I want to add my thanks to the youth for leading us into God's presence this morning as well. You guys did a great job. I find the passage that we read from just now in Ephesians 6 to be a significant one in a couple of different ways. First, I find it significant because it takes an instruction from the Old Testament, from the Ten Commandments, and which was given by God hundreds of years before this time to God's people Israel through Moses, and it restates it and it reinforces it. Now, we certainly know that the New Testament is built on the Old Testament, and at times the New Testament quotes the Old Testament, but not every command that we see in the Old Testament, or not every passage, is quoted. So when we go through and we see Old Testament passages or commands that are quoted, that are restated, I think it should cause us to sit up and take notice. God is trying to tell us something. He's trying to communicate something to us. Secondly, I find it significant because, as Paul points out here in Ephesians 6, it's the only one of the Ten Commandments that has a promise attached to it. If you read through all the Ten Commandments, all of them just kind of state what the command is. This one states what the command is, but also says that there's a promise that's attached to it. The Old Testament passage says, "Honor your father and mother, as the Lord commanded you, so that your days may be long, and that it may go well with you in the land the Lord your God is giving you." Now, Paul applies that to children, but notice that the Old Testament, the Ten Commandments, doesn't necessarily say children. It says, honor your father and mother. So it's applying to all of us, in all of our stages of life, not specifically addressed to young people, but to everyone. But notice as well that it says God's instruction essentially saying is that if I want to have blessing and success in my life, then I need to put others, and in this case father and mother, before myself. And it's the opposite to what the world really says. The world tells us that if I want to have success in my life, that I need to focus on myself, my own needs, put myself above all of the things and all of the people. God says the opposite. And so on this Mother's Day, which serves to give us a reminder to honor our mothers, a reminder that we shouldn't need, but we do a lot of times, let's focus on this instruction. If God says it's important for us to honor our mothers, how do we do that? What does honoring our mothers look like? And so this morning I just want to share very simply and very briefly a bit of my story, my own personal journey in this. We all function in all kinds of different roles in our relationships. In terms of this Mother's Day remembrance, as a man, I'm a father and a son and a husband. And so I want to share some of the things that I have learned now that I wish I had known years ago, or I wish I had worked on harder years ago, that I think will help all of us, I hope, to be able to honor mothers today, and not just today, but every day. My mom passed away on January the 1st in 2013. As some of you have experienced, whose mothers have passed on, we actually lost Mom twice. Mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's when she was around 50. And so they got her on medication right away and to try and slow things down, but that's when we really started to lose her. By the time she physically passed away at age 62, she'd already been gone a while. So we'd already said goodbye in a lot of ways. And so in some ways it was a blessing for her and for Dad and for us when her physical life ended, so that she could begin to enter into the heavenly life that was ahead of her. And so that's a bit of my story with my mother. And what I want to share for the rest of the time today is just a few things that, as I said, I wish I had known when I was younger, or I wish I had understood, or I wish that I had worked harder at. Things that I wish I had known when I was your age, young people's age. And my hope is that it'll be helpful to us who, whether we've lost our mothers already, whether they've gone on ahead of us, or whether they're still with us, that it'll be helpful to figure out how we honor our mothers. What does that look like? The first thing is to honor her physically. If you know the 5 love languages, Gary Chapman's love language, you'll know that physical touch is an important part of a person's love language. Some moms need that more than others. And so if your mom is still with you, I'd encourage you to think about when was the last time you gave her a hug, unsolicited? Or just came up and gave her a kiss on the cheek without having her ask. I can't remember when I started hugging my parents again, but I went for a long time without doing that. There was a long time between when I was a little kid and when I was an adult before I actually started hugging my parents again. And I remember it feeling awkward at first, but we kept doing it, and I know it was well after I had my own children that I started to understand the need for that. And so now, even today, whenever I see my dad, which isn't all that often because we live a couple hours apart, I always make sure I give him a hug. Touch is a powerful way of communicating our love and our honor to our mothers. It would mean more to her than flowers or candy or a gift. I'm not saying you can't do those things. I want to back you up here, mothers. Those are good things too. But those powerful ways of communicating, those meaningful touches, whether it's hugs or whether it's a kiss or whether it's another form of physical touch, is a powerful way of communicating our love to our mothers. The second thing is to honor her patiently. I've heard it said about some people that if they treated their friends like they treat their mothers, they wouldn't have any friends. And if they treated their friend's mom like they did their own, their friend's mom wouldn't let them have anything to do with their kids. Maybe that's true. We need to honor our mothers like she honors us, like she loved us. She deserves our patience, deserves our respect. The author, Jill Churchill, wrote, "There's no perfect way to be a mother and a million ways to be a good one." Our mothers aren't perfect, just like we're not perfect. Our relationships with our mothers can be challenging at times because of their imperfections and our imperfections. That's just part of being human beings. My mom, even before her diagnosis with Alzheimer's, had struggles. She dealt with what we'd probably call today, they didn't name it at that point, was chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. And even before that, even though I think at the time I was too immature and maybe too self-absorbed to notice it, she dealt with some pretty severe depression. And so my mom at times was physically and emotionally unavailable. She would just kind of shut down and disappear at times. And that was challenging as a child growing up. Ephesians 4:1-3 says, "I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you've been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with each other in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace." And Colossians 3:13 says, "Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you." Those words not only apply to each other in our relationships, they apply to our mothers. Because we do have things in ourselves, and our mothers have struggles, and we need to bear with each other. We need to be patient with each other. We need to understand those places of weakness, those places of struggle. The other word for patience, sometimes you see it in other Bible translations, is long-suffering. And it means that we need to stick it out. We need to not give up. And so sometimes we need to do that with our mothers because they, just like us, struggle and have things that they deal with. So honor our mothers patiently. Thirdly, honor her with your attention. Good mothers listen as we pour out our hearts. Think of all the times that your mother has listened to your stories, listened to the things that you're going through, the concerns, the worries. We need people to listen to us. There's a story about Susanna Wesley who raised 19 children, including John and Charles Wesley. If you're not familiar with who they are, founding people of the Wesleyan Church, the Methodist Church. But 19 children. And there was a visitor in their home one day when Charles was 5 years old, and he asked his mom a question. And his mother answered the question. A few minutes later, he comes up again. He asks the same question. She answers the question again. And the visitor said 7 times this child came up and asked the same question. And she answered the question. And finally, the visitor said, "Why do you keep answering that question? Why did you answer it 7 times?" And she answered, "Because 6 would not have been enough." She was there to listen. She was patient and listened. So who does our mother have to listen to? Who listens to her now? Who is her rock? And so the challenge is for us to take time to listen if your mother is still around. I wish I'd had the opportunity to do that for my mom. But she was gone before I really realized how important that was. That time has passed. But we know that if our mothers, any of our parents really, but our mothers, as they age, there's fears and anxieties and things that they struggle with, and we need to be there for them, to listen, to honor her with our attention. Fourthly, honor her with gratitude. I hope my mom knew that I was thankful for her, even though I was not good at communicating that. We think about all the things that our mothers have done for us. All the meals made, all the diapers changed, all the barf cleaned up, room cleanings, baths, laundry. And that's just when we were little children. How else have our mothers blessed us? But just by listening to us, by supporting us, by hearing us out. How much they've worried for us as we've found our way in the world. And so we need to honor our mothers with a sense of gratitude, of sharing with them that we are thankful for them. We are thankful for what they've done if they're still with us. And then the last thing is to honor her verbally. Mothers need to hear that we love them. They need to hear it. Husbands and fathers, we need to model this for our children. Our children need to hear us telling our wives and their mother that we love them, that we love her. And I'm bad at this. I think I'm slightly better than I was when I was in my relationship with my mom, but I'm still bad. And if Kim were here, she would agree with that. Because some men tend to have this attitude or this philosophy that I don't have to say I love you a whole bunch of times. You already know it. I've told you before. And if I change my mind, I'll let you know. Or we can have the attitude that I don't have to say that I love you because I show it. I do things for you. And that can be true. But the reality is that our mothers need to hear that we love them. It needs to be verbalized. They need to hear the words, "I love you." There was a Dear Abby letter many years ago that I'm just going to read for you, and it talks about this. And it goes, "Dear Abby, I enlisted shortly after Pearl Harbor. 36 days later, I was on my way to the Philippines. En route, the Philippines fell to the Japanese, and we were routed to Australia. 11 days after we landed, I met the most beautiful girl in the world. On our first date, I told her I was going to marry her. I did, 18 months later. After more than 57 years of marriage and 2 children, my beloved Mary died 5 days before Christmas. Although we agreed that our ashes were to be scattered over the mountains, I found I could not part with hers. While Mary was alive, she would frequently say, 'You don't know how much I love you.' I'd reply, 'Likewise. I never said I love you.' Now her ashes are on my dresser, where I tell her several times a day how much I love her. But it's too late. Although I wrote poetry to her, I could not bring myself to say the 3 words I knew she wanted to hear most. As my dearest was dying and we thought she was comatose, I told her, 'There aren't enough words to tell you how much I love you.' A few hours later, she whispered, 'Not enough words,' and died. The reason I'm writing this is to urge men to express their feelings while their loved ones are alive. I don't know why, but men are reluctant to express the depth of their feelings. And it was signed Missing Mary in Colorado. There's power in words, whether it's a husband-wife relationship or whether it's a parent-child relationship. Our moms need to hear the words, I love you. There's power. Don't just assume that she knows. Somebody once said, you're living out your best days when you have your children and your parents still with you. And I think that can be true. There's two aspects to that. One is about our children, reminding us that we need to be the kind of parents that our children need. But it also reminds us that we won't always have our parents with us. Because when we're young, we think that they're always going to be with us. I mean, we know intellectually that eventually they're going to not be there, but that seems like a long ways off. Maybe it will be a long ways off. Maybe it won't. We don't know. And so my encouragement and my challenge today, based on the life that I have had, a relationship with my mom, is to take the time to honor her today. We don't know what tomorrow holds. Make sure she knows that you love her. Make sure she knows and experiences you honoring her. Honor her for the good. Be patient with her in the challenging things. Husbands, fathers, model honoring your wife to your children. Mothers, we appreciate you. You are important people to us. And we appreciate all that you are and all that you do for us. Let's pray. God, I pray a blessing on all those who are mothers or have functioned in mothering roles. That they've modeled your love. They've modeled your protection. And as Ron has illustrated at the beginning, just even in nature we see this mothering instinct that you have put in us. We need mothering, and we need mothers. So God, I pray a blessing on all those who have been our mothers in lots of different ways. And I pray that you would challenge and encourage us as children, us as husbands and fathers as well, to show honor to our mothers, to say the words, I love you, to live out lives in a relationship that show honor to the women in our lives that mean so much to us. I pray these things all in Jesus' name. Amen. Have another song now, I think.